Coming up on this week's edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Are your genetics aligned with your environment and business goals? Experts from some of the leading breed associations will share practical advice on how you can improve your herd and increase your profits with high-quality genetics.
And now, NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen.
Hello and welcome to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. I'm Kevin Ochsner. Thanks for joining us. Today's beef producers are looking for ways to improve productivity and profitability by making management decisions that align the needs of the market with the resources available in their own operations. Every operation has unique goals and resource constraints, so one size rarely fits all. Genetics are one of the most important decisions a cattle producer makes. It impacts your herd and your profitability for years. So what tools and technologies are available to make better decisions about genetic inputs? I'm here with a group of experienced experts from a handful of different breed associations who are ready to share some practical advice on evaluating and selecting genetic inputs for your herd. To begin with, we welcome Colin Osborne. Colin represents Beefmaster Breeders United. Colin, tell us just a little bit about the history of your breed.
Well, thank you, Kevin. We appreciate the opportunity to be here this morning. The Beefmaster breed was developed by Tom Lassiter in the 1930s during some pretty tough economical and pretty droughty times. In 1954, the breed was recognized by USDA as a U.S. beef breed. Mr. Lassiter set out to develop the breed because he knew that he needed cattle that would be more productive and more profitable for his part of the world. He isolated and identified 6 different traits that helped him reach the Beefmaster breed, with those being weight, fertility, hardiness, conformation, disposition, and milking ability. We appreciate the opportunity to be here, and those 6 essentials have helped move us forward where we are today.
Thank you, Colin. Next is Dr. Dan Moser from Angus Genetics. Dr. Moser, give us a little background of the Angus breed.
You bet, Kevin. So the American Angus Association and the Angus breed goes back to 1873 in the United States, but I think what we're most proud of is our history of innovation, particularly in the area of performance testing and genetic evaluation. The first breed to collect carcass data, genomic evaluation, ultrasound. That's really what we're most proud of, and I think how we best serve commercial producers.
Thanks, Dan. And Dr. Joe Mask is with us. He represents the American Brahmin Breeders Association. Joe, tell us a little bit about the Brahmin breed.
Thank you, Kevin, and we appreciate the opportunity as well to be on Cattlemen to Cattlemen to talk about the breed of American Brahmin cattle. This breed started with the importation of Indian cattle, the Guzarats, Nellores, Gears, Crescent Valleys, in the mid to late 1800s. And then we started the association in 1924, 95 years ago in Houston, with kind of the first secretary there, Mr. J.D. Sartwell, that coined the frame Brahmin. And so it's been a long history of environmental adaptability type cattle that have some longevity, and we're just proud to be part of the beef industry today.
Very good, very appropriate right down here in Texas.
That's right.
And also with us from the American Semantol Association, Chip Kemp. Chip, tell us a little bit about the Semantol breed.
Sure. Semantol history goes back a long time, and so we could dig into that, but probably more appropriately is to talk about, frankly, semis came in about the same time many of the Continentals came in, roughly 50 years ago into this country. Probably the core principle of Semantol is the function in which the association was founded and the premises of which it was built on. It was designed a little different than some of the other associations, data focused from the start. And as a result, that's what has allowed us to weather some of the trend changes. So certainly coming in as a Continental, you came in one era in one fashion. Sure. Today, that has evolved greatly to serve the commercial producer. And so again, the history, while certainly not as long as what Dan mentioned in this country, very data focused, and we think that's what keeps us relevant today.
Very good. And speaking of Continentals, another breed that came in about 50 years ago, the Limousine breed. Mark Anderson joins us with the North American Limousine Foundation. Tell us a little bit about the history of this French breed.
Thank you, Kevin. Yes, similar, I think, to what we see with the Semantol and when the Continental cattle came in the late 60s, early 70s to the United States. The breed was originally from southern and central France, and as far back as the 1600s, and I think the first cattle into the French herd book was practically around 1860 or the late 1800s. The North American Limousine Foundation was started in 1968. That was the same time they imported Prince Pompadour over to Canada, and the original 100 founders of the North American Limousine Foundation had semen rights to that bull and initially started their crossbreeding programs and breeding up to full-bloods and purebreds through some British-based cows at that time. But known for their feed efficiency and high yield and cutability, the cattle were used quite extensively for crossbreeding, and today we offer the hybrid with the Limplex cattle, which are basically crossed with Angus or Red Angus, as well as our full-blood and purebred populations.
Very good. Well, anxious to learn a little bit more about each one of the breeds and what they each contribute to the U.S. beef industry. Let's begin with the foundation, and that's the cow herd, right? So I would ask you all, as folks begin evaluating their cow herd, what sort of criteria and factors should they be considering? And Dan, I'm going to start with you. I recently read an article that suggested that just about 80% of the nation's cow herd is British-based. What would you guide folks to do?
Well, I think it starts with data. You know, it's a data-driven business today, and so the record keeping at the commercial level, I think, is essential in terms of evaluating productivity, evaluating marketing opportunities, and setting goals for an operation. Until you have those goals set, that I think going further and making changes is a little bit challenging. So I think it starts with record keeping and goal setting to help producers be in a position to move in the direction they want to go.
Very good. What would you say, Chip?
I would concur with Dan. The business is changing, and we are going to have to identify some metrics that give us knowledge. And so whether that comes in the fashion that if you do nothing else, know the caliber, quality, and reg number of the bull you're buying, right? So you can at least source back to some of that knowledge. For some, it's going to be much more sophisticated data collection. Maybe it gets into the realm of genomics, potentially even genetic eval for some commercial producers. So I think knowing your cow herd, it's nearly implausible to make breeding and mating decisions if you don't know your cow herd. And then from there, using time-tested tools of quality genetics, appropriate heterosis where it matters, those tools put you in the best position for a longevity-minded cow herd.
You know, one of the things we talk about that separates the cattle business from, let's say, the hog business is that we have to run cows in various environments. We can't throw them in a barn and manage them the same all across the United States. And so I'm going to turn to my Texas friends and ask, first of all, what role does environment play, and what are some of the factors and criteria somebody should be thinking about as they consider their environment, feed resources, weather, climate, all those things? Joe?
Well, I think one of the biggest things for us in the southern Gulf Coast, is all the way from Texas all the way to Florida, is the environmental adaptability of these cattle to thrive in wet and marshy type country, as well as those cattle that can crossbreed and go out there with some longevity. I think knowing that cow herd in the environment, you know, it's going to go back to, you know, looking at feet and leg structure. How do we get these cattle to move and have that longevity? And then as well as deal with the insect population that we have with mosquitoes and flies. And so I think the Brahmin influenced cattle, you know, can help with that.
Sure.
And, you know, I've always been a firm believer that, you know, you get to the Gulf Coast of Texas, Mississippi, Louisiana, those quarter bloods are important.
Gotcha. What would you say from Beefmaster standpoint?
I would certainly agree with Joe. It's vitally important when we start talking about how important it is to have some diversity within breeds, and so that it excels and helps us move forward with our crossbreeding programs and take advantage of heterosis and some of the free dollars that are out there today. Then we turn into some of the longevity and adaptability portions that are current in our Indicus cattle and how they can thrive in these really harsh environments.
You know, bull selling season is right around the corner. Obviously, it's already begun in many parts of the world, and I'm curious, what would you tell producers in terms of what they should be thinking about when they get those catalogs and begin selecting bulls? Mark?
I think the most vital thing is know your cow herd. You know, if you know what they're doing at your place, and I mean, the business, as you guys are aware, is so competitive right now in a challenging environment to operate in. You're trying to reduce your cost and increase the value of your calf crop. So what Dan had talked about, the record keeping, the data, and then apply the tools that breed associations offer to go ahead and look at those EPDs, understand percentile ranks and accuracies on cattle, the application of genomics that Chip talked about. We're so much farther ahead than we were 5 years ago. There's value in doing some research and trying to find these cattle that can accelerate your genetic progress, I think, Kevin, and from the fact that just break-even standpoint and creating value, utilize breed associations to help you understand that data, because such a tremendous amount of record keeping has come together to try to provide good, accurate data. When you buy those cattle for your seed stock, they're going to do what they're predictable. So
That's good. Chip?
Well, I think you've heard everybody mention the cow herd, clearly, right? And so buying bulls without knowing your cows is a bit chasing your tail. But I'm going to dovetail off something Mark just said, because he talked break even. I guess maybe I'd argue for the last 20, 25 years, the business has been all about talking revenue.
Okay.
Let's talk profit, right? And so I think when you're sourcing bulls, you need to utilize tools that can help you identify profit on the two sides of most folks' business. Now, for those folks who are buying all their females, it's different. They can be very terminally focused. But if you're retaining daughters, you need to utilize tools that allow you to identify appropriately maternal metrics, but then also to weigh them appropriately in your bull battery, not overweigh them so that you're sacrificing all terminal merit for the very limited number of females you're keeping, or vice versa. And so I would argue that we're in a world where index tools are clearly, they're useful in every other animal species. It works. And I think that's arguably a place we need to focus more on in bull season.
And help simplify all the data if you use those indexes. We'll follow up on that a little later. What would you add?
Well, I would just say that as we know, our cow herds are getting smaller, and most ranchers are working in town.
Sure.
And they start looking at bull buying season as those traits that they need to look at for that cow herd on cavities, docility, those kind of things that are going to help them when they get off of work, and if they're going to have to be dealing with dystocia issues or that kind of aspect. But I think just as Chip said, the indexes are really important. Not just the single EPDs, but what type of indexes can we have, and we have some new ones in Brahmin that can help those producers figure out, are they going to retain females? Are they selling on the grid? Are they going to, are they just selling across the market as well?
Goes back to what your objective is, right?
Sure, and Kevin, it doesn't have to be either or. I think that's maybe the perception out there, that there are cattle that work really good in the pasture, there's some cattle that work really good in the feedlot, but there's a lot of cattle that do both, and we've got better tools than we've ever had to find those cattle and put those cattle to work where they belong. And so that's, you just need to study a little bit, learn these new tools that all the organizations are bringing out. But, the whole goal is to make it simple and straightforward. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that. We just follow up with a little more education.
Colin?
And I'd echo that. We talk a lot with our producers about their toolbox and what they have to use in that toolbox. And those tools are there for a reason. There's no reason not to utilize them. There's no doubt that profitability and efficiency go hand in hand in the industry, and we have to be cognizant of those things. Cows that go out and work hard, do a great job of weaning heavy calves and raising replacements, as Dan said. It can go hand in hand, and utilizing the tools that breed associations have brought to the forefront for commercial
to really find
and
those
seed
unique
stock.
animals. I think that's what Dan mentioned. So let's talk a little bit about some of the tools and services breed associations offers. Interesting, a report that I recently read indicated that about 35% of the people were asking for registration papers, which I thought was incredibly low. I'd be curious to have each of you tell us some of the services that you provide and what are the benefits of buying a registered animal. Dan, you're the represent the largest breed association. Let's start with you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think having that information in your hands as a commercial producer and being able to access up-to-date information is critical. But that also then opens up a whole set of avenues, particularly on the marketing side. Okay. Angus with Angus Source and Angus Link, those programs, being able to connect in, and we're glad to help producers market those cattle and get the genetic value out of them. Sure. You've made the investment in top-end bulls that do a lot of things well. There's value in those calves. We just have to bring some transparency to the marketplace. And so that program in Angus Link is something we're very excited about, because we think we can really differentiate between cattle that have added value in the marketplace.
What are some of the services the Beefmaster Breed Association offers?
So certainly we think there's a viable opportunity there to validate genetics, as Dan said, through registration papers and a known pedigree and a background known performance of what these animals can do and what we expect them to do. So the marketing avenues and opportunities that are out there are all being tied back to value-added programs, and being able to fit those specialized programs is vitally important today, and we feel that's the need and the direction that we're moving.
I'm curious, you guys export a lot of your genetics, and I'm curious, what does the association offers in terms of services related to marketing and international marketing?
Well, yes, Kevin, we do a lot of international marketing in the association. I think it goes back to, keeping that integrity to our herd book, parent verification, the education on our international guests as well as to what do they need in their cow herds. And so as we move forward, I think in the Brahmin Association or any breed association, education is key to let them know what we have. And then as far as domestically, our F1 program, that hybrid Vigor program, that's really strong, the queen of the cow country is that Hereford Brahmin cross. And then we have some sales just for those cattle.
I see.
And then as well, we have our big international sale in Houston every year. Right. It brings a lot of international exposure to the American Brahmin.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. Chip, how about the Semantol Association?
Well, I think for any of us, we'd say our core competency is genetic evaluation, right? All of us admit, without doing that credibly and well, the rest of it frankly doesn't matter. But I think your question's really appropriate because to a large extent, we're evolving a bit to really becoming a service provider. And in some cases, that directly aligns with some of our historical applications. Some cases, maybe it grates and chafes against that just a little bit, and we have to work and navigate through that. So yes, internally, from a Semantol standpoint, we need to provide opportunities, tools, and incentives to help our breeders do their job. But the Semantol group, as you know, is a very open herd book. So we do data for any and all, including EPDs for commercial cow-calf operations. But probably the biggest and unique opportunity we have falls in a partnership that we do with a whole host of breed associations. We actually work with in a group that's called International Genetic Solutions. It's a fairly substantial genetic evaluation, totally multi-breed, 16 breed populations, and the 17th partner is Neogen Genomics. And so trying to reach out to where we can meet any producer. If you are looking for the pinnacle of genetic awareness through structured genetic evaluation, phenotypes, genomics, we have a place for you. If you're a commercial producer who has that hard to capture data we all love, cow longevity, carcass data, we can incorporate that. Or if you're like the masses, well, I want other folks to do that, but I want to benefit, then you have tools like Identity and the like that can come in there. And so again, I think it's becoming a multi-tiered approach to our job.
And a multi-breed approach, to your point.
Amen.
Mark?
Very much spin off probably what Chip's saying through the cooperation with International Genetic Solutions. The power of that herd book, and I think being able to crossbreed, compare EPDs for those cattle that are involved in there. I think you've got 17 breeds in there now, Chip. I think it's pretty powerful when we can look at the cattle, combine the genomics with all the performance data in there, and be able to make accurate comparisons as we're looking at trying to find genetics that fit our commercial cow herds throughout the country. There's so many things that commercial producers can do, and don't be bashful about calling any of these breed associations, I'm sure, but we've got wonderful opportunities just in our herd book for an individual to pull up cattle for the 17 traits, and you can set your EPD parameters. You want homozygous black, you want homozygous polled, you want, we don't want a single trait select, but if we're weak in 2 or 3 areas, we can query cattle that if we're going to bull sales, we can pull up a list, get it on an Excel spreadsheet that actually can help you find the cattle out there that you're trying to make progress with. So
very good. Some targeted genetics for your needs.
Yep.
Very good. Well, this is a fascinating discussion, and we have a lot more ground to cover before we're through. Up next, our panel will discuss EPDs, both how they're developed and the long-term benefits they offer producers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
No matter what you're hauling, if you're looking for a trailer that will stand up to anything you or your animals can throw at it, you should be looking at a Calico trailer. Family owned and operated for more than 3 decades, the team at Calico has proven experience building the best possible trailer for your dollar. And they'll give you exactly the features you want.
One thing that sets Calico trailers apart from other manufacturers is every trailer we build is custom built. We really focus on what each person wants to use their trailer for.
Calico builds more than 2,000 trailers each year, and their dealer network is more than 100 strong, meaning you'll find Calico sales and support offered nationwide.
If you want to know more, just go to our website at calicotrailers.com or give us a call. We'd love to talk and answer all your questions.
Friendly people, tough trailers. That's Calico.
Welcome back to this special edition of Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we gather valuable insights from a group of breed association reps about genetics and breeding decisions. Well, we talked a little bit about EPDs and genetic evaluations moments ago, and I guess I would like to begin. Dan, can you just give us a skinny, quick definition of what EPDs are and how are they developed?
Sure, Kevin. So an EPD is an expected progeny difference. That's the idea that we're combining data from lots of different seed stock, in some cases commercial operations, with pedigrees, with genomics, and we're using all that information to make the best prediction of that individual animal in terms of what their progeny will do when you use that bull in this case in a breeding program. It's not a predictor of him, it's a predictor of his progeny, which is what really matters. But that number accounts for environment, it accounts for the competition in terms of who his cattle were compared to. All the noise in the data is pulled out, and so you get a pure genetic value that's comparable within that breed, so you can make the best decision to get an outcome that you want in your particular operation.
So that brings up an obvious question. There's a lot of data, and I see a lot of bulk sale catalogs that include all the EPDs together with birth weight, weaning weight, ultrasound data, scrotal circumference, on and on and on. Chip, is it more important to evaluate the EPDs or the actual data, or should I be looking at both?
Great question, and just to dovetail off Dan, so that actual data, that actual birth weight, for instance, when you open that bull catalog, it is important. But it's not important to the person looking at it on that day. That was important to your seed stock provider. That actual birth weight was incorporated into a seriously thoughtful genetic evaluation. And so that's already built into your birth weight EPD, your calving EPD. So, a couple things to consider. If you don't believe that your seed stock producer is using those effectively, find a different seed stock producer, okay? And then also recognize, we all know this, that a birth weight from the same mating here in San Antonio is distinctly different than the weight that calf's going to come out if they're in Bismarck.
Absolutely.
Or if it's a spring fall. And so again, the raw data is important, but it's important to the serious seed stock folks who are using it behind the scenes to incorporate those EPDs that Dan spoke about. On sale day, that is a very risky measure. It has essentially zero predictive capability to tell you how those calves are going to come.
And as we've talked, Dan, I think last year on the program, you select for a low actual birth weight, you're probably going to get a calf out of a heifer. I mean, that's what you're selecting for virtually, right?
Yeah, you start to give up, and this goes back to some conversations from the last segment, in that if you overemphasize, and that's what you are doing then, if you're double dipping and using data along with EPDs and you're confusing your own self, you're ultimately selecting against, again in this example of birth weight, you're selecting against growth at a heavy level, and we all still sell pounds.
Sure. Colin, what would you add?
No, I would agree that EPDs are definitely the most valuable tool that probably comes out of breed association today. There's no doubt that those individual measures are important, and they give assurance to the breeders and those guys that are making purchases and selection decisions. But without a doubt, the EPD definitely lends more integrity and true genetic merit to what these cattle are and what we expect them to do.
You know, the seed stock industry has been guilty from time to time of chasing fads and trends. Having said that, believe it or not, Chip, that's right. Having said that, it's important to recognize what downstream customers are wanting and what some of the macro trends are in the beef industry at large that are going to drive the genetic needs of the beef industry. Mark, what are some of those downstream consumer needs and industry-wide trends that you think we should be factoring into our genetic decisions?
The key word is what you said, is downstream. We tend to think of our own cow herds, Kevin, and I think as we look at the business and look at the history of the cattle business, the one thing you know, things change. Genetics change. We've all changed the kind of cattle we're making today from what they were 20 years ago. But as we look at the big picture, I think that we don't want to get too far out over the edge, but be cognizant of what's going on with consumer demand and what's going on at the next level in these feed yards. I mean, look at today. we're feeding finished weight slaughter cattle up to 15 and a half, 1,600 pounds is common, and we were just at 13 and a half here a few years back. So we need some cattle with some outcome that can get some dry matter conversion, good average daily gains. It's a big deal as we look at the next thing as far as saving cost and just total dollars on feed efficiency and dry matter conversion. Look at the choice select spreads. I mean, it used to be $10. Now we're out, get as wide as 24 to 30 as we get seasonal in the summer and back in the fourth quarter of the year. We know we've got those big premiums and we've got those export markets. So I think those things are all things that we need to be cognizant about as we're trying to provide seed stock to producers that are trying to increase their bottom line and effectively just trying to stay with the market. But I think sometimes we reach too far. We still need to stay middle ground and not single trait select. But we definitely got to be coherent of what's going on in the industry and the folks downstream and ultimately the consumer.
Dr. Mask, what would you add?
Well, I think that everything that Mark said is true. I think we've got to look downstream. What does our buyers want? Especially in eared cattle today, looking at that carcass quality, that choice and select spread that Mark was talking about. People that are retaining ownership of females, what are they doing with age of puberty and fertility in these cattle? And since 2017 with the VFD and the Veterinary Feed Directive and maybe some limited use of antimicrobials that we're going to have to use in these cow herds as well, is keeping our cow herd healthy. Sure. Using that veterinarian to really make some of those key decisions is going to be a trend. To make the consumer understand as well that our main focus is food safety, and that our cow herd is healthy. And then I think you still go back, as I mentioned before, it's still that structural integrity. These cattle that can thrive and they can move wherever they're at, if they're on the Gulf Coast or if they're in North Dakota. So I think it's really important.
Hard to talk about consumer trends without mentioning certified Angus beef. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Kevin, I think that's right. That there's demand for high quality product, and that's still a growing demand, and we want to achieve that with genetics. But I think the sustainability concept that we think about too. Just improving things like pregnancy rate. We can have all that together. We can have a more efficient system that makes better use of our resources through genetic selection. We just got to use the data and apply it.
Chip, key trends or consumer issues?
But the consumer issues are wide open and they're moving fast and furious, right? And so clearly we've mentioned those already. So a couple things I would take. It still boils down to two pieces, as was just mentioned. Your cow's got to last. And these calves, these terminal calves, have to have value. Now, how value is determined is certainly going to evolve with time. I would suspicion as we lose some of the tools that are in Colin's toolbox, as we talked about a little bit ago, some of the prophylactic use of various products, as they continue to become less prevalent in our business, we're going to have to find ways to get to 1,600 pounds, still produce a product, an animal that is healthy in a feed yard, can tolerate that environment. And so, again, we are going to have to be very diligent at looking at not only within population genetic values for those pieces. We're going to have to be comfortable at least exploring the use of responsible crossbreeding to help, because again, it will help with healthfulness really fast in a lot of situations.
And reproduction.
Well, yes, on the cow side and on the feedlot side, given some of the dynamics that are facing that business right now. And so I think we have to look at how fast it's moving on the other end, but then take a deep breath and say, okay, what are the tried and true tools that are in our capacity to use to address those things and to still give us flexibility downstream to navigate those waters?
Colin, what would you add?
So, I think for all commercial producers, it boils down to profitability. If they can't stay in business, they can't really utilize any of the tools and the programs that we have in place. So I think making sure that we continue the march towards efficiency, which I think ties straight into sustainability and longevity of cows, and then making sure that the cattle can meet the market needs and the market demands at that time, so that these guys can reach a profit and be profitable in their own programs.
Yes, indeed. We can't be sustainable unless we make a profit. That's a great way to summarize it. Don't go away. We'll have more insights from our panel, including their thoughts on the future of genetic evaluations, right after this.
It's time to register for the 2021 Cattle Industry Convention Winter Reboot virtual event, February 23rd and 24th. Reconnect, reinvent, and reimagine all the ways you can engage with top industry experts and vendors virtually from anywhere. The Winter Reboot is a jam-packed 2-day virtual event consisting of education programs, a Washington, D.C. issues update, Cattle Facts Outlook session, Tech Tools preview, and a sneak peek at what to expect during the 2021 Cattlemen's College. This is a great way to reset in 2021 and prepare for the upcoming in-person Cattle Industry Convention and NCBA Trade Show, August 10th through 12th in Nashville, Tennessee. Dial in to convention.ncba.org for all the details and to get registered today.
That certain time in the day when you can take a deep breath, knowing your work is done. That's the feeling Aspen products can create. Cost-effective alternatives to name brands that deliver the same results. Qualaxin is one of them. Use it to prevent and treat respiratory disease in your herd. Then breathe easy. Find them at Animal Health International.
Welcome back. We're here with our panel of breed association professionals, and we just had a discussion about EPDs. Let's talk about genomically enhanced EPDs. What do genomics bring to the equation, Dan?
Sure, Kevin. You know, the accuracy that you get from a genomically enhanced EPD, where that particular animal not only has data, pedigree behind it, but also a genotype incorporated, you just get significantly higher accuracy because now we're accounting for that inheritance. We're really building a better pedigree by tracing it to the right ancestors. But in the end, what matters to producers is the accuracy is equivalent, depending on the trait, to having 10, in some cases 30 progeny of that animal measured. And so the risk around that number, the practical range, what that animal really is, this new EPD with genomics included is just that much more accurate.
Take some of the guesswork out.
Absolutely.
What value does it bring to commercial producers, even in terms of genetically testing their cow herd, guys?
I'll jump. Well, philosophically, we all know there is no short term in the beef business, right? And so, to the points made, we need to use the sharpest tools available to us, and no question, genomics do that. And so, I guess I would urge those folks back on the ranch, back on the farm. You're investing significant sums of money in your bull battery. And wherever your seed stock producer is going, as a good friend of mine says, so are you, just slower. And so, if you're investing your money with that outfit and they're refusing to use some of these latest tools, you really need to ask them why, evaluate that thoroughly, and then ask, is that a good utilization of your dollars when you're trying to prep yourself with this bull purchase, which is going to impact you 10, 15 years from now when you turn the place over to your kids. They're going to have to live with the implications of that.
You had mentioned the need for cows to move around the pasture and actually be structurally sound. And so it brings up the question, can we paint by numbers and just look at EPDs, or where does visual appraisal come into this?
Well, I think you still have to be a stockman and you have to go out there and visualize those cattle. I've always told people, if you don't like looking at your cows, it's hard to feed them every day. And so you've got to have those cattle that you like, number one, that fit your purpose. Where do you want to go? Is it that maternal side? Is it a terminal type of cow herd? And it goes back to, you know, if we go look at the show ring or we look at the cow-calf producer, feet and legs to me is the most important thing. If we're building a house, we want a good foundation. And so foot size, bone, the longevity, I think Chip nailed it really good when he talked about, you know, leaving this herd to your kids and your grandkids. And so, you know, using those genetically enhanced EPDs to have the accuracy, but then to have that cow herd that's functional, that can thrive for years to come.
Anything to add, Colin?
No, I concur. You know, when we start talking about evaluating animals, they have to be functional. They have to be sound on their feet and legs. Those angles have to be right, otherwise they're going to break down. They're not going to last, and longevity goes out the window. With the cost and expense there is today in making these purchases, we talk about the use of genomics and how that's helped us move forward, and there's no doubt that that's there. But if they can't get around and breed cows, or cows can't last, it really kind of goes out the window.
Very good. Well, still ahead, we'll talk with our panel about crossbreeding and how that could impact an operation. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Are you ready for a better shot at profitability with a more consistent, more efficient cow herd? Then don't miss out on the maternal edge offered by Gelbvieh and Balancer Genetics.
Stayability and longevity is really a strength of the Gelbvieh breed, and you know, when these cows can remain in the herd 10 years or thereabouts. They return a lot of dollars to the producers.
Research shows Gelbvieh cows will stay in your herd longer with greater fertility and more pounds of calf weaned.
It's the ability of that cow not only to have that calf unassisted, but to own that calf, to stay right there with that calf, to do whatever's necessary to get that calf going no matter what. No breed we work with does a better job of owning that calf and making sure that she's going to take care of than the Gelbvieh breed.
For cow-calf producers, the maternal traits offered by Gelbvieh and Balancer Genetics are the smart, reliable, and profitable choice. Find out more at the website gelbvieh.org.
We didn't just design the 6M tractors with you in mind. We designed them with you by our side. The new 6M tractors from John Deere, reimagined by you, for you. With improved visibility, better maneuverability, and more ways to customize, so you get everything you need and nothing you don't. Experience the new 6M at your local John Deere dealer.
Getting to run a family farm is a dream come true. When you can grow good grass, there's opportunity to grow plenty of weeds. We want to use the tools that will help us do a better job. I would like the legacy to be that we took really good care of the land and we truly did it as a passion and we did our very best for the right reasons.
Welcome back. We're talking with a group of breed association executives about a variety of topics that cattle producers face on their own operation. And I want to begin talking about hybrid vigor. Obviously, you all represent breed associations, but let's be honest, hybrid vigor works in chickens, it works in corn, and indeed works in cattle. You all have been maximizing or capitalizing on hybrid vigor for a long time with Beefmasters. Tell us about it.
Sure, Kevin. No, there's no doubt, however you want to describe it, crossbreeding, hybrid vigor, heterosis, it's the one thing within the industry that is free, as we mentioned earlier. It's hard to overcome, but crossbreeding is very impactful to commercial herds and their profitability. But it also impacts the in multiple levels, from fertility and longevity on cows, adaptability to those females, to their climate and region, and vitally important, I think, to the industry as we move forward.
Now, your two organizations have actual hybrids that are registered. Is that correct?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
In the Semantol platform, again, essentially any and all breed compositions are welcome until we look at that. I think the long and the short of it is, to Colin's point, the data is just abundantly clear. Responsible crossbreeding works on the direct side, of course, in that terminal calf, right? So if we look in ours, for example, the Sim Angus calves, a great pairing of two phenomenal breeds. And if you go to Superior Livestock Auction, they'll tell you in the last few years, there's been a 5-fold increase in the number of Sim Angus calves identified on their platform. And that's wonderful from a direct standpoint. But the gift in the business is maternal heterosis, right? That's what, again, goes to our cow longevity. She's more productive in her lifetime. And so if you're a commercial outfit and you're running a bunch of straight Semantol cows, and you're not reaching out and looking at an Angus or a Red Angus bull, you're doing it wrong.
Gotcha.
And vice versa. And so we are convinced the data's clear and our producers just make more money, Joe, if they go about it in that fashion.
So Mark, what should people consider if they've got a set of cows and they want to try a different breed? How do they go about selecting the right breed for their herd?
I think that's a big part of crossbreeding. We talk about the heterosis and the hybrid vigor, Kevin, but the next big thing to me is breed complementarity. And I think as we look at most of our hybrids on our Continentals versus our British-based cows, we're trying to find that medium. We get it with one cross. As Colin said, you get the big bang for your buck on the female for stayability, calf survivability, and weaning weight. But as we look at the life of that crossbred cow over 12, 13 calving seasons, those pounds add up and those dollars add up. As we look at the same thing as we're trying to find the right balance between marbling and yield grade and finish weights, that breed complementarity, I think, Kevin, for finding the right cattle for the right cross to fit today's industry, it's the quickest, biggest free lunch, as Colin puts it, in crossbreeding in the cattle business. And I think it's got a lot of future. And the tools that we have now to find those cattle and sort them out through these different breed associations, it makes the job easier for the commercial cattlemen.
Yep. Any specific thoughts relative to what producers should consider in developing a organized crossbreeding system?
Yeah, Kevin, I think one of the things that you always need to think about is the relative contribution of the breeds. And we may have learned a long time ago that British breeds do this and continental breeds do that. There's been a lot of changes, a lot of genetic selection in all the breeds. And so people need to understand that they're used to using, say, one particular breed where breed average is acceptable for heifer bulls. You need to make sure that as you look at other breeds, how do those populations line up? How do they line up for growth? How do they line up for calving ease? How do they line up for marbling? All those traits, I think that's really important because it's not that they're all exactly the same.
Look at the animals, not just the breeds.
Yeah, exactly, and the differences between the breeds in terms of if I want to have the same level, there's good data from the Meat Animal Research Center and other places that let you say if I want breed X and breed Y to be at the same level of a trait, but you got to do the math to figure it out. You can't just assume average is average.
And when we talk about hybrid vigor, it becomes even more exciting when you cross Bos Indicus with Bos Taurus, right?
That's exactly right, Kevin. I think that when we start looking at heterosis and environmental adaptability that the Brahmin breed brings and the longevity of that cow with the British and the continental breeds is very important, especially for the Gulf Coast and those semi-tropic type of areas that we're dealing with.
Very good. Great insight, guys. When we come back, we'll have more from our panel of experts, including their thoughts on some of the different marketing opportunities that breed associations offer to commercial producers. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Cattle producers across the country work hard to care for their animals and their land. The USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service is there to help. Find out how you can work with NRCS to develop a conservation plan for your operation. Find possible funding resources for implementing conservation practices, or get free expert advice on ways to improve your farm or ranch. Visit the website nrcs.usda.gov today.
Welcome back to NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen as we get insights from a group of breed association reps about leveraging the value of genetic tools, information, and technologies in your operation. I guess I'd like to begin. Breed associations have a number of tools and do a lot in terms of helping commercial producers market their calves. Chip, what are some of the programs that you all offer?
Well, in terms of marketing feeder calves, probably our primary platform would be through the IGS system, again, a tool called the International Genetic Solutions Feeder Profit Calculator, a little bit of a mouthful. And that tool is a no-charge effort. It does have a cost, it's just the seed stock guys are eating and gals are eating that cost. But the profit calculator is open to any producer, regardless of affiliation. If you can provide us reg numbers on your bulls, we will give essentially a prediction, a total relative value, a profit prediction of terminal merit of your feeder calves. Excellent. And how that might speak to the feedlot sector of the business. It's a dollars and cents tool. It takes about 20 minutes of your life. You turn it back around in about a day, maybe two if it takes a little bit of time. The value of that is clearly its marketing, but maybe the funnest part, and I talk about this frequently, Kevin, is the consultation that comes from that interaction. Oftentimes we find opportunities where folks go, if I just maybe move the needle a nickel on this management mechanism, maybe I can add X dollars to my, amen, yeah, so we go. And so that's probably our primary tool.
Dan, you mentioned Angus Link. What else do you all offer?
Yeah, exactly. That folks are buying good bulls. They have genetics not only that work in the pasture, but on for the rest of the industry. They deserve to get paid for that. And so the idea of Angus Link is to get those cattle documented. So if you've had Angus bulls transferred to you, we can pull that information right in automatically in our database. You can add other breed bulls as well, get a score on those calves, and then get our marketing power behind it, get those cattle out in the marketplace so that we can connect with the feeders that want those kind of genetics.
Outstanding. Let's look to the future, guys, and I'd be curious to ask each one of you, what are some of the tools and technologies that you'll be providing both your seed stock as well as commercial producers in future? Mark?
A couple things right off the bat. I mean, this summer, in cooperation with Neogen GeneSeek, we're going to start our cow herd project to try to capture more genomics on our mature cows. A lot of our memberships doing AI sires, donor dams, and their bull offerings. We've got that cow factory that stays within that herd every year. So the value of getting those done at maybe half the rate that a 50K would cost, it'll add a lot of power to our genetic evaluation from our side. I think the exciting things about the genetic evaluations and being in cooperation with IGS, we're about to start gathering, and we've got a lot of phenotypes now on carcass data. We're blessed to have a fair amount of our membership that's highly engaged in feeding cattle, and they've got access to pedigrees, and we're actually in the process now of evaluating about 50,000 phenotypes or 50,000 cattle in those carcass phenotypes from actual harvest data, which adds value. All the phenotype and weight trait data that we've turned in, that's going to bring up those progeny equivalents and those accuracies on those carcass traits as well, so that's exciting. A host of all other things. I'm going to let Chip tell you about some more of the things at IGS, but it's getting exciting.
What can we look forward to in the future?
Yeah, well, excuse me, within the Semantol subset, clearly we've had a massive mature cow approach going on for the last couple years. That's brought in tremendous amount of genotypes and phenotypes on hard to capture mature cow traits and stability traits that we've talked about a lot here. We're in the middle of a $750,000 massive carcass awareness project, again, tying those hard to capture traits with genomics. Within the IGS platform, which is really the strength of the whole deal. We all work together and collaboratively, all these cross linkages within that 20 million cow database we're investigating heavily PAP EPDs, and then going forward, everybody's vested in feedlot health. Everybody's invested in the genetics of those aspects. And so what you're going to see from us, I think, is continued growth in more partners in the IGS platform, more accuracy in the data, which is key and crucial, and then again, more an aggressive push to some of those novel traits.
You bet. What can we expect from the Brahmin breed?
Well, I think you're going to see more data driven type programs. We have our ear program now, which is a steer feeding type program where we collaborate with universities to get that data collected. And that's where it doesn't matter how big your operation is. If you've got 5 steers to feed or if you've got 50 steers to feed, we can put those lots together and still feed them in an aspect where we can look at that data, especially when we start talking feed efficiency, average daily gain, and then looking at some of these cattle now on the American side of the Warner Bratcher shear force and the tenderness of these cattle. So I think you're going to see more data-driven things out of the Brahman Association like that, our bull test. And then we'll keep doing our F1 program as well with the hybrid vigor and the heterosis that those cattle, give to the commercial cowman as well.
How about St. Joe?
Yeah, we're looking to just leverage the industry's largest genomic database to extend it to more traits, particularly on the longevity side. A year ago we launched a foot EPD for foot conformation, and that's been very well accepted by the industry. PAP EPDs that for folks that work and ranch in the high mountain country. This spring we're going to be launching a hair shedding EPD to identify the Angus cattle that work best in the Gulf Coast and in the fescue belt, so that folks that want to place an emphasis on adaptability to fescue and heat, that tool's out there. And the thing probably we're most excited about is understanding the genetics of immunity. We have a partnership with Australian Angus and Canadian Angus, and the preliminary data looks extraordinary in terms of identifying the underlying differences in immunity as we face more challenges in the industry along some of our product use.
That will become more important. Colin, what would you add?
Well, here with the Beefmaster Breed, we're certainly focused on gathering more data. We've recently released, or will be releasing, a stability EPD and trying to fine-tune a little bit more of the fertility traits and fertility function that's out there to identify those females and genetics that excel within that platform. But I think it all goes back still to trying to produce and get the genetics that the commercial producers need and request. So we're going to continue to gather data and build some partnerships with other associations and universities, gathering these different data points and types and help us move forward.
It's been said seed stock producers are the architects of the future, and I'm excited to see the building you all are creating. Don't go away, we'll be back right after this.
At Leachman Cattle, we're committed to building more profitable cattle. As a third-generation seed stock producer, our family has been in this business for over 80 years. Today, we have the best technology ever to build more profitable cattle. Our dollar profit index is a leader in the industry to help you balance all the traits that drive your bottom line. Give us a call or go to www.leachman to learn more.
We know you're up before the dawn because the cattle rise before the sun. And you spend long hours in the saddle because the herd isn't always over the next rise. And you care for the lamb because you know it takes care of your family. And we know you do great work. And it's time to tell that story to the marketplace. IMI Global is here to help you do just that.
You have an upcoming production sale to advertise? Then contact the Cattlemen to Cattlemen marketing team or your breed association to learn more.
Well, undoubtedly, this has been a fascinating discussion today, and I really want to thank each of you and your respective breed associations for coming and sharing with us just a glimpse into the future about what we might expect in terms of genetic progress in our industry. Now, if you'd like more information about these and other breeds, go to the website ncba.org and check out the Breed Affiliates page. Well, that wraps up this edition of NCBA's Cattlemen to Cattlemen. We thank our panel once again for their insights, and thank you for watching. We'll see you next week, right here on RFD TV.